Welcome to the Golf Report podcast. I'm joined by York College of Pennsylvania head golf coach Jordan Koller. Coach, thanks for your time and how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on today.
Yeah, thank you. So just tell me, we're in the off season. Your team just, your men's team just competed
Mhm.
in the national championship. Just tell me about some of the things, you're going to be doing, coaching and outside of coaching, maybe, this summer.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, with coaching, summer I think is a big time for recruiting for us. There's a lot of junior tournaments going on. So, traveling to some events and trying to follow some players, really kind of develop those connections, throughout the summer as we start to, prepare for 2026, 2027 classes. Um, and then, personally, I actually help work at our home course, Country Club of York, during the summer. So I'll be helping with their junior clinics and some of their ladies clinics as we go through the summer. So just keeping up those, technical coaching skills while also, getting to know our membership and really continuing to form that relationship with them that we've done over the past few years.
Nice. So your home course is Country Club of York. Just tell me a little bit about, your team's home course.
Yeah, so Country Club of York is a Donald Ross original. So it's about 5 minutes from campus, which is super convenient for our team. Really old style golf course, so greens and tees are really close to each other. It's on top of a hill, so a lot of different elevation changes. It's not really protected because of its elevation, so you'll get a lot of wind most days on it. So depending on what direction the wind's blowing that day on the first hole, you kind of know whether or not you're going to have an easy or a tough day on the golf course. Um, and then, yeah, we have great practice facilities there as well too. So we actually have to drive down to the range. And so they have a driving range there. They have a big short game area, and they also have a short range, which is about 30 to 120 yards with three other greens that our team can practice hitting to. So a lot of different places for them to practice, and between the facilities themselves in the practice areas and then the golf course, there's really not a situation that they're not used to when they go into tournaments.
Yeah. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I was looking online, your schedule in April, your team, your women's team hosted a home tournament at Regents Glen Country Club. You said your home course is, York Country Club. So just tell me about that. And your women's team, won your home tournament. So just tell me about, hosting your home tournament and what it was like, for your women's team to get the victory.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Regents Glen is also a few minutes from campus, so we have a
Mhm,
good relationship with both courses. Country Club of York is our official home, but
mhm.
Regents, we have that great relationship where if for some reason there's an event happening at York that we can't access the course, they allow us to come and use their facilities on a as needed basis. So when it came to hosting a women's tournament, they were really flexible and stuff, especially, coming in last spring. It usually takes about a year to schedule a tournament. So, being able to kind of come in, they had that availability to host there. That course is an Arthur Hills design, so it's a little different than CCY. CCY is more like that Donald Ross wood style golf course. Um, Regents Glen has more of that link style, so you're going to see a lot more fescue. It's a little more open in some areas. But it's a really good course, especially for the women to play. Um, so yeah, we just hosted that. We had a total of six teams, including ourselves playing. And I think it was just a really big confidence booster for our women. I think just throughout the spring, they gained a lot of momentum. We obviously won in Williamsburg at the Ruckus. And then had a really strong showing down in Camp Lejeune, which was our first time down there. And so after those two tournaments, going into playing at Regents, I think they just had a lot of momentum, a lot of excitement, getting ready for conferences. So yeah, I mean, I think overall, like I said, it was a confidence booster. It was something that they really were excited about, and they, really played, I think, their best golf when they were out there, and just used the skills that we developed throughout the spring, not just with their game, but mentally as well. And I think that's what really brought home that win for us.
So your men's team this past season won the MAC Commonwealth Championship by
Mhm.
18 strokes, and you had, Jacob Fripp and Matthew Salter finished first and second individually. So
Mhm.
just what was it like for, your men's team to win, the conference championship this year? And also your women's team finished second. So just
Mhm.
also tell me about your women's team, having a good performance second out of 11 teams.
Yeah, absolutely. So with our men's team, that was the same five that went to nationals last spring. So they already had that experience of winning conferences going into this year. So the biggest thing, they had to remember was like, last year doesn't really matter. It's the new year, new tournament. Every team is getting better with every year. So, they kind of just went into it with like, what, let's just focus on, what we can control right now. That was a big thing we talked about throughout the spring is focus on the controllables. We're all going to have a bad hole every now and then, but play to your strengths as much as possible. And that's kind of the mindset they went into this tournament with. Having three seniors also too. This was their last opportunity to, extend their season, and to have, another tournament to look forward to. So, I think there's an aspect of that as well for them going into the weekend. But I think, that was probably one of our best weekends of golf. I think they just really focused shot by shot. What am I looking at right now? What can I control right now? And honestly, most of them walked off the course not knowing what they shot at the end of the day, because they were just so focused on their process. So, it was a really great feeling. We were super excited to go to nationals. But I think just overall, we were super proud of just how we played and how we handled ourselves on the golf course that weekend.
Yeah. So then your team, just recently, a few weeks ago, played in the Division III National Championship, in New York. Just tell me about, how you feel like that tournament went. Obviously, probably would have hoped the result would have been a little bit better. Just overall, how do you think the experience was for your team getting to compete, in the national championship this past
Yeah,
season?
absolutely. Well, I think the national championship is always a great experience for any team that goes, regardless of where they place, just because you are getting to play with some of the best teams in the country. You're getting to witness that kind of play, and you see, what it takes to play at that high level, right? So, being able to be around teams like Methodist, like Illinois Wesleyan, coming in the top two. Um, those being able to see like, okay, that's what it takes to play at that level. It gives, our underclassmen that motivation of what they need to do going into, next year, what they need to kind of teach our incoming freshmen, our rising sophomores. Okay, this is what we need, to play at that level. So I think that is like the first thing that's a great part of going to that national championship. Um, I think, we didn't play our best golf that week, and I think that's something we all agreed on that we just weren't playing our best games. And then you couple that with just the rainy conditions. The golf courses were definitely championship golf courses. So
Mhm.
they weren't easy for anybody, as you could see by, I think, all of the scores. Um, so with that, I mean, it was like you had to kind of just take your medicine throughout the weekend, throughout the week, actually, of just like, okay, like this is what I have to deal with and I have to adapt. And I think that's just something we know going forward that we have to learn to, continue to get better at is just adapting to changing conditions, adapting to difficult conditions, maybe not relying on the numbers that you're used to and having to, club up more or take a different shot to just put yourself back in a good position. So a lot of things that we definitely learned from it. But overall, it's just a great experience to be out there and to just see like, okay, this is what it's going to take for us to, continue moving our program forward.
Yeah. So I was following along, with the national championship, and I saw that there was a lot of rain. So just tell me about, dealing with the rain at the national championship, just how you feel like, your team, navigated, the
Yeah.
weather.
Absolutely. It was difficult for sure. And I think, it also was at the women's championship for those that went there too. Battling with rain and different conditions is always a challenge, especially when, you are having a long round. We played at Cobblestone on day two, and it was, I think everyone can say it was a brutally long round that day. But, you kind of have to stick it out. You can't control that it's going to be raining. Every single person has to deal with it. And I think that's just something, the team kind of kept telling themselves was like, okay, like everyone has to deal with these conditions. Like it's not great. It's not necessarily the most fun. But we're just gonna, keep moving forward with what we can control. I think all semester, what we have done and what we have talked about in terms of mental game is really focusing on the controllables. And so that's something that for every tournament, every competition day, we go back to like, what can I control right now? And you kind of just have to deal with it.
Yeah. So I wanted to talk now about your women's team. Your men's
Hmm.
team, won conference championship and they, made it to the national championship. And
Hmm.
I hope, you would hope the same for your women's team next year. Your women's team, finished second only by 2 strokes. And,
Mm.
you only have one senior on your roster, Olivia, who graduated. But my next question is, what do you see for your women's team going into next year? And, I noticed that, you have lots of juniors on your roster, so you have a lot of seniors next year. Even, Grace Strickland, who won the MAC
Mhm.
championship, she'll be a senior next year. So, what do you see for your, women's team, given you'll have, a lot of seniors on your roster next year and, be returning a lot of players next year. And, what do you see for your team, to hopefully, get over that hump and hopefully, get first place and get to the national championship, just like your men's team, did.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so yes, we're losing Olivia, but we're actually losing Tori as well. She graduated a year early. A little
Okay.
shout out to her. She's going to law school next year. So super proud of her. Sad to lose her a year early. And yeah, Grace had a remarkable year. Shout out to her too. She had surgery back in September, and so her being able to make that recovery and join us in the spring has been really awesome. So just super proud of that, and her having won conferences was amazing.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I mean, like I think going into next year, having a lot of returners, we have a lot of strong young players. I mean, if you look at Ava Johnson, one of our freshmen, Victoria Jalakian, one of our sophomores, Lily Davis, who is also a sophomore, really kind of came over that hump this spring and really being able to shoot more in the 70s and stuff. So we have a really strong, group of returners who are coming back, and we have a lot of other players on our team. Like I said, a lot of seniors who are really want to push this coming year and have a strong senior year. Um, so I mean, yeah, I think we're in a good spot. Conferences, it was just unfortunate. We had a really rough hole three on day one. If you look at the scores, so that lost us several strokes there. But I think they fought, all day on the second day to, really put themselves in a good position. It was just unfortunate, last few holes. Golden Oaks isn't always the easiest. It's a usually pretty tough stretch when you get to about, I'd say, 13 through 16. So definitely not easy right there, especially when you're in the middle of a conference championship. So I think, we learned a lot of how important it is for us to stay strong mentally and to stay, again, focused on each shot. I think towards the end we got a little nervous and a little worried about where the scores were at. And, I kind of just try to remind them like, hey, focus on yourself right now. Everyone else is doing their job. But yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to next year. I think we'll have a similar strong schedule in the fall. We'll be hosting another tournament as well too in the fall. Um, so I'm looking forward to see kind of where we're at Denison.
Yeah. That's great. So, Coach, I wanted to talk about, some of your background. You have a very interesting, background prior to
Mhm.
coaching. You worked at the NCAA in Indianapolis in the championships operation department, and you
Yes.
also, worked at the Alabama Golf Association,
Mhm.
being the manager of junior golf and tournaments. So, just tell me about, your two experiences, working at the NCAA in
Mhm.
Indianapolis, and then also for you, what was it like, going from, you went to school in Pennsylvania at your college, and then you moved down south to Alabama working at
Mhm.
the Alabama Golf Association. Tell me about, what that, transition, like was like for you, working at the Alabama Golf Association, just generally, moving down to Alabama and living there.
Yeah, absolutely. So, first, yeah, working with the NCAA. So, I was a championship operations intern. So, I worked with primarily Division two festival. They had the fall festival in 2022. So that was kind of my main job. I helped at the Division three football championship, which was hosted at Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland. And then, yes, I left to go to Alabama in March of 2023, which is when I started up there and worked with their junior golf programs. They were in their first year of their new junior tour, which was really kind of adding a tour that was going to be affordable for families, but also kind of gave that stepping stone to the state junior tournaments and stuff. So Alabama had previously just hosted a girls and boys state junior as well as a 13 and under state junior. And then so their junior golf Alabama tour was that stepping stone for kids who had been kind of in clinics and camps and things like that into that tournament golf realm. So that's kind of what I went down there for. Most of the staff that I worked with at the time were also transplants. So they were pretty, everyone kind of understood that transition of moving to the South, but the South definitely held up to their history of, Southern hospitality. So very quickly, was very welcomed down there. And as much as I enjoyed the warmer weather and being a part of that community, I was happy to, return back home to York and, kind of help with the teams. But I think both of those experiences really aided me in understanding, A, how the national office works with the NCAA, understanding kind of how championship operations and all those things happen on the back end, as well as working with the governance staff. Um, and then also getting to work in Alabama, understanding the running the tournament side of things, understanding the rules of golf, going to rules school, getting my advanced certification in the rules. So I think both of those experiences really aided me coming to York and having that variety of experience.
So I forgot to ask this question. Usually I start out with it, especially for the smaller schools, but can you tell me a little bit about your college?
Yeah, so we are in York, Pennsylvania. We are about 30 minutes south of Harrisburg, so pretty much south central PA, right in the middle of the state, 15 minutes over the Maryland border. So we're a smaller school. We're probably around 4,000 students or so. We're kind of like right by York City, but you go in one direction, you're in the city, you go in the other direction, you're in the country. So it's kind of that nice middle ground right there, about an hour away from Baltimore, hour and a half from DC. Philly's right there. So that kind of that central location for a lot of major cities, which is great for all of our students. Just have access for internships and just other opportunities with other businesses. York is definitely known for like their nursing program and our engineering school, but our business school is also really great. Sport management, which is what I studied there, is one of our largest majors, I think, within our business school. So a lot of our programs are also very hands-on, experiential based, focused on, what skills do you need to know by the time you graduate, and not just like, not everything is going to be out of a textbook. A lot of it is that research based, evidence-based management, a lot of projects. A lot of my assignments were actually working with different organizations outside of York to like do different projects. So our marketing classes involved the York Revolution, which is our local minor league team. Another class involved USA Lacrosse to run a clinic. So we get a lot of those different experiences throughout all of our majors, which is a really great thing.
So Coach, you're from Maryland, Brookeville, Maryland. Can you just tell me a little about, your hometown growing up in Maryland, just how you got started playing golf and, ultimately what drew you to York College?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I grew up in Olney, Brookville. And so went to Sherwood High School, played golf there. But just grew up playing. The story is that my dad practiced in the backyard and I laughed at him when I was about 2 or 3 years old. And he was like, well, if you think it's easy, you come try. And so from there, just got my own little set of clubs and went to golf camp at some of the local courses over the years and then started working with a swing coach when I turned 12. And then around that time was when I started getting into tournaments. So played like the junior golf league or junior league through the PGA that had just started up when I was young. And then kind of getting into the local section tournaments and stuff. So the Middle Atlantic section was what I usually played with. And then just kind of going from there, different tournaments, playing in invitationals. I stuck to mostly regional tournaments. I knew I wanted to be in Division 3, so I didn't need to travel a crazy ton. But yeah, kind of just went from there. Enjoyed playing golf, played a lot over the summer. Usually had 10 to 15 tournament days every summer, plus a few tournaments every spring and fall, plus high school golf. So kind of just grew from there, but I always loved the game. And as I got better, I fell in love with it even more. And going to college and playing college golf, being a college coach was always in the back of my mind.
Yeah. So two things I wanted to talk about, in your time at your college. In 2019, you were part of the women's team that captured their first conference, championship, the CAC conference championship. So just for you, coming in your freshman year, what was it like, for your team to win their first, conference championship in program history?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is a day that every single person on that team will forever talk about. It's probably our favorite tournament win. Um, just because, we won by one stroke over kind of our conference rival at the time. And so being able to do that was just really exciting. I think day one we were up by I don't know, 10 to 15 strokes. I think it was around 12 or 13. And then day two, we lost that advantage. So we went into day three tied. And so ended up coming out by one. And I think, that team was just such a competitive team. We just had this desire to win, to kind of prove ourselves and to set up our program, really. Those first two classes, our goals collectively were to make this program something that was going to be really good and that we wanted to compete at a high level. So doing that in my freshman year and the second year of the program was a huge milestone for all of us getting to do that. So yeah, it's something that will go down in history, and I think every single person on the team will probably talk about what those last couple holes looked like and felt like, whether you were watching or playing them. Um, and so, yeah, that was definitely a really great thing for the program. It's something that we always talk about too with the team of like, hey, this is where we started. This is kind of what it took to get there. And I think that kind of comes in my coaching as well too, of like understanding like where the program started and where we're going with it, and the kind of grit and focus that it takes, to pull a win like that off.
So you did, you balanced academics, very well as playing, golf in the women's golf team at York College. You earned the MAC Senior Scholar Athlete for the 2021-2022 season. You had a 3.9 GPA as a sport management, major, and you were a three-time, All-American Scholar and, two-time All-MAC selection. And you were also, president of, the Student Athletic Advisory Committee, and you're a member of the Newman Club. So just tell me about, how were you able to balance, your academics and playing on the women's golf team, and also, your other activities, being president of SAC, being a member of the Newman Club. Just how were you able to balance, playing college golf and, your academics and, different activities so well?
Yeah, I think part of that is being at part of that decision was with coming to Division three. Division three is known for being that well-rounded experience, having time, academics being number one, right? Golf being number two because, that's a commitment you make, but still having time for other things that are important. So that's a part of the reason I came to Division three. I think my priorities were always straight when I was in college, so I knew what was important. I knew how to get it done. I think the great thing about college is you get to do work that you enjoy and that you're interested in doing. So it made the work kind of easier to get done. I'm someone that I want to do my work right. So yeah, I mean, like for me, like that was not a difficult thing to do. I also just came from a really great public school system where, I was pushed really hard in high school. So it actually made my college experience a little bit easier when it came to writing, doing projects, things like that. Um, but then yeah, balancing golf, I think our coaches did a really great job of doing our schedule. We still practiced 5 or 6 days a week, but I never felt like it was overwhelming or anything like of that nature. And our coaches were fairly reasonable and flexible with us too. So like if I was like, hey coach, like there's a random practice day where I was like, hey, can I come a little bit earlier because I need to go to this event for something. And they knew, I worked hard. I was putting in the effort. I was still coming and doing the work at the course. Sometime every now and then they'd let me kind of, be flexible in that way. So that was always helpful too. But also the organizations I was involved with, Student Athlete Advisory Committee, obviously they know I was a student athlete. And then Newman Club too. I was actually president of that for about a year and a half as well. Those the students I worked with on that e-board also understood I was a student athlete. We had another person on their e-board who was a student athlete. We all kind of balanced it. It was understood that like when I could be there and when I couldn't be there. Um, but yeah, when I didn't have academics or golf, I was able to make those other things priorities as well too.
Yeah. So last year, in April, you were announced as the head coach at York College. You're a former, you're an alum of York College. So just what was it like for you to get to, be named the head coach at your alma mater? And just what was it like, you lived in, Indianapolis and Alabama, after college. Just what was it like, for you moving back to, York, Pennsylvania to coach your alma mater?
Yeah, absolutely. It was really exciting for me. I think, getting to move away from home was one of the best things I did for myself, learning to, be more independent out of college and stuff. I always say college is kind of like that safety net for people. But, getting to move away for a little bit, learn, to grow up and be an adult outside of college, outside of your parents' home was really important and a lot of fun for me. But I was also missing being close to my family. I have a very close family. And so being further away is definitely harder to do. So when the opportunity, presented itself, I was really excited to have that opportunity to A, be closer to home, but B, get to be a part of the program that in a way I helped build already as an athlete. And so being able to come back as a coach and, start to implement the things that, I want to see with the program, make adjustments, that I see fit, take some of the things that I really liked from my coaches as well, too. Um, and yeah, I was very, very excited to be a part of the program again and, get to, continue what, where we left off, but also get to see where this program is now um, and go from there. I think not many people get to see the fruits of like the labor that they had. So being able to now, as a coach, put them in really competitive tournaments, get to um, really push them a little bit further because I knew where we came from. And I know what we did to make sure that they had the opportunities that they had today. So I think that's really gratifying as a coach to get to come back of like, okay, like I helped kind of make sure the program had the foundation to get to where it is today. And then now as a coach, how can I maintain that and help push them even further?
And finally, coach, just tell me, what have you learned so far in your coaching career? You've just been coaching for just over a year. What have you learned so far? And, what have you enjoyed, the most in your coaching career so far, getting to coach at York College?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, one of the biggest things I learned is just like how much respect I have for my coaches and what they did for us. I think as an athlete, you're not always aware of what's happening, when your coach is like in their office working. Most of the time you think of a coach, they're out at the golf course, or they're on the field or whatever. And that's where it happens, but there's so much that happens behind the scenes. So I just have such a great respect, for them. And then, just like, I guess like something I've really learned this year is just, that communication with the players of, being really open and honest with them. Something I've really tried to do is bring in, their opinions and make sure that they feel like, they have some sort of a say when it comes to building out their schedule and being mindful of, making sure that their mental health is in a good spot, that they are, not feeling like they're overly stressed or that there's too much going on. So really just creating that space for them to come talk to me when they feel like, they need to and stuff. And also too, just like making adjustments as we go. So, as we go through the first year, there's definitely things that I kept the same from the previous year, with the old coaches, but then, now as I'm going into my second year, definitely thinking about, okay, what can we change now that's not only going to make this more my program, but also, that's going to make this program continue to get better.